Well, good morning and welcome back to the Little French Homestead. If you are new today, welcome. My name is Sherry. You are actually going to be joining us on a wonderful adventure today. We are going to be making some make-ahead meals. I know how sometimes it can be real busy. School's back in session, so you may have games, practices, maybe even dentist appointments or doctor's appointments that you got to get to. Sometimes it is easy just to go ahead, take a casserole out the night before so it can thaw in the refrigerator and then plop it in the oven. Or if you got some of meals made up with some crock pots, that's also really handy and easy. This is a two-part series today. I'm going to be doing some prepping for both videos. I started at like 9 o'clock this morning for this, and I cooked until about 2:30. I did take a small little break here and there. Right now, I am getting ready to make some meatloaf. My family loves my meatloaf, and I did try a new recipe, and it was actually almost as better as mine that I usually do, but I'll go ahead and I'll link that below. As well as all the other recipes that I am going to be doing today. And in the next video, all of those recipes as well. So I usually start my my meatloaf. I am making actually meatballs a little later. My meatloaf with 1 pound ground beef and 1 pound ground sausage. But since I'm making a double batch, I'm doing 2 ground beef and 2 ground sausage. We're going to be adding the normal ingredients that you would. When you do see in a few minutes, when I pull out all the ingredients, I did put in a brown sugar. Now, hold that thought. Now, the recipe that I was actually following, it does call for brown sugar, but it calls it in the glaze. Now, we don't typically glaze our meatloaf, so we would add your normal standards, your onion powder, your garlic powder, ketchup, salt, pepper, everything like that. Well, I just happened to glance at the recipe, and it said some brown sugar. And I was like, all right, I'll go ahead and add that in there. Well, you know what? It turns out that was actually a wonderful mistake. I could not believe how delicious that really came out. Thankfully, I made 2 of those, so we're going to have another delicious one. And I am going to actually keep this recipe, and I'm going to do that again. Sometimes a oops mistake turns out to be a delicious meal. So here you see me grabbing all the ingredients. Like I said, I'll leave a list down below of what I actually put in. Now, I sometimes go ahead and wrap these up with some bacon, but I forgot to thaw my bacon. If you have ever or even never had bacon wrapped meatloaf before, you ought to. It is absolutely delicious. It gives especially when you do your ground sausage, all of that fat and even the fat off the bacon, because you're going to go ahead and cook it, get it to temp. You're normally 165 to make sure that your ground beef is thoroughly cooked on the inside. Then at that time, you're going to add a broil setting because you really want to get that bacon nice and crisp after all of the bacon fat has dripped all over the sides. It is absolutely divine. I have a video that I had made one, and I will link that below. But we're just going to stick with this recipe right here. Gonna be getting my hands a little dirty in just a second. I did forget to add, um, I should have added just a little bit more salt to it. But other than that, this recipe was perfect. I have had the um, the baking sheets behind me already lined with some parchment paper. A good little pro tip is if you crinkle up your parchment paper, it does make it easier for you to set your product, whatever you're cooking on it, so much easier because it doesn't fold on the sides or anything like that. Now, I did bake both of them. This is earlier in the day, but I wanted to go ahead and cook them both because I did have other cooking and other baking that I had to do, and I wanted to make sure that they were cooked thoroughly. Now, I didn't cook them all the way through. I did leave a little bit of room, so there is some pink in there, only because when I go ahead and defrost them overnight and I put them on a baking sheet and put them back in the oven, I don't want that to be too dry. That's the only reason why I did that. Some of these, except for chicken, some of these cooking, you could go ahead and do, like not cook all the way through. So then that way when you go to heat it all up in the oven, now you're bringing it back up to temp. Now you're finishing the cooking and it's not going to be dry. Because I've had dry meatloaf before and it was not good. But these come out actually very, very juicy. I'm going to turn them into little squares. I know that some people use a bread pan or, to put their meatloaf in. I usually don't like that. I find that putting your meatloaf like this, it actually cooks it more thoroughly and more evenly, and it doesn't take as long as when you cook it in a bread pan, because the bread pan is going to be so smushed together, and then there's all the grease is at the bottom. At least when you cook it on a cookie sheet, the grease does go off to the side. You can then very easily remove your meatloaf, so then all the grease doesn't sit in the bottom of it. Now, when I go to freeze one later on, I do go ahead and take out a brand new parchment paper and I fold it all together. I usually wrap it up a couple times with some aluminum foil, and then I go ahead and wrap it in saran wrap, but not before I put the directions on there and what it is and what month I've made that in, because you always want to make sure that you date everything. There they go. Now we are going to be making some chili. We haven't had chili in a long time, and I know I live in Florida and we don't really have winter per se as we did in New England, or more importantly in upper New England. But I got the chili going, that way we can go ahead and have some. Now here we are making meatballs. It's pretty much almost the same ingredients as the meatloaf, but then I caught myself with that brown sugar, so I did not add the brown sugar to the meatloaf, the meatballs. And I will go ahead, like I said, and link this recipe. You can see up on the top right hand side where I do have a list of my recipes, or the recipes that I want to do for today. I did throw in there some sloppy joes and a shepherd's pie, but I did not have time to make any of those. So I just went and just did the few things that I do here. Now, I have made before. I started making videos on YouTube. I used to do a lot of bulk cooking, almost like this. And I would literally start like 8 o'clock in the morning and sometimes go to, 5, 6, 7 o'clock that night. There was one time I had made like 80 meatballs, two things of shepherd's pie, two things of lasagna, which I would love to make lasagna again. But because I burnt out my family, we haven't made lasagna in over a year. And every few months I ask them, hey, would you like to go ahead and have some lasagna? And they all look at me and say no. So I can't even do lasagna. I can't do like any jumbo shells or anything like that. So for right now, I am okay. If we happen to need any lasagna, they can go to this. We can go and just go out to eat, and they can have lasagna out there if they really, really want it. I won't make it for several more years. But yeah, so what we just do here is make the meatballs. I actually made 48, and I divided them into two separate bags when they were done cooking and fully cooled off. Now, I noticed here that the chunks of onions were a lot bigger than I normally would cut them. I think I grabbed the wrong batch of onions. I had onions for the meatloaf and I had onions cut for the meatballs, and I think I switched them. So that's why here the onions are a little bit bigger, but that's okay. And then I forgot to add that in there. A little bit of Parmesan cheese. Give that the nice old Italian flavor. And you're going to go ahead and bake this in the oven as well. I think I got the meatloaf in there at about 350 or 375. And you're going to want to do the meatballs at the same temperature as well. So now I'm going to go ahead and preparing my chili. I thanked myself because that package of onions or that package of peppers were already all pre-diced up. Publix had buy one, get one free of the mini variety peppers, and I love those when they do that. So I usually buy like, 2, sometimes 4 bags, and I dice them all up for times like this. That way the prep, it wasn't as bad. Now we're following this particular recipe. I've made this one before. It does call for jalapeno peppers, but I do have them, but they're frozen, and I didn't de-seed them beforehand before I bagged them all up, which I kick myself in the butt now for, because I really would have loved to add that in there. But I forgot to de-seed them before I put them away. And those are from my mom and dad's garden. My dad is a green thumb. He loves to go ahead and garden. He's got a whole bunch of stuff going on right now at his home. And he's given us a blessed amount of vegetables, which I use quite often in my cooking. Now, this is my last little bit of garlic. I do have a video which I can link down below as well, but I'm going to be making some more of my garlic pucks. I don't have any more left, but I did go ahead. We went to Sam's Club last weekend and we went and picked up a 3 pound bag of garlic cloves. They're already peeled and everything. All I do is I put them in a food processor. I grab like an ice scoop, like an ice cream scoop, and stick them on a cookie sheet, usually on parchment paper, stick them in the freezer several hours or overnight. I always do overnight. And then you just put them in a Ziploc bag and stick them in the freezer, and then that way you always have fresh minced garlic at any time. That way you're not having to cut and deal with all that if you could be in a hurry. There's a lot of tips and tricks that I've picked up over the last 10 years of me doing a lot more of my homemade cooking. Believe it or not, I did not like to cook about 15 years ago. Then I had my twins and I started making all of their food from scratch. I'd go buy, squash, carrots, zucchinis, sweet potatoes, all that stuff, apples, and I would sit there and I would make all of their own food. And then I really, really enjoyed picking up my cooking skills. I really enjoyed that. Then I had a catering business in New Hampshire. I then really, really loved that. I wish I could cater here in Florida, but unfortunately you cannot cater out of your kitchen. You have to go ahead and cater at a facility, and I just don't have that type of crowd down here or anything like that. So you can see here I'm just grabbing a small amount, trying to make them all even. Gotta line them all up on the parchment paper. And like I said, 350, 375 in the oven, anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes. And then, if you really wanted to, you can go ahead and just break one in half at about the 20-minute mark, as long as they're cooked all the way through. Now, these ones, I make sure they are cooked all the way through, because most of the time here, these would just be a meatball sub or spaghetti and meatballs. So I don't need to cook them as long as I would need to cook like a meatloaf. So these here, you want to make sure you cook thoroughly all the way through. And you can use these in just about anything. You see how my meatloaf is all done? They look beautiful. There goes my meatballs. Good job, Sherry. I'm taking you in for a little closer look at this chili. It was actually very, very delicious. And we'll probably do chili dogs one day. Now I'm going to show you the meatballs. They came out to be like a nice golden brown on a lot of the areas. Steaming hot. So here's everything all wrapped up and the chili and everything. So I just want to say thank you so much, guys, for being here today. If you like these videos, please like, share, but most importantly, go ahead and subscribe and keep on cooking. Bye.